I hope everybody can hear me properly. My name is Camille Santa Fe. I am representing the Ontario Center of Excellence for Child and Youth Mental Health this evening, and I'm bringing to you the Pillars of Youth Peer Support online learning series. We'll go over a few logistical pieces. Before I continue this session, please, I would like to recognize the history, strength, and diversity of Canada's First Nations, Inuits, and Métis communities. Um, at the center, we are committed to engaging respectfully with Indigenous children, young people, and families within and across nations of what is known as Ontario, the city in which I stand and am joining today's session. Live and study is the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Nation. Um, at the center, here is a quick slide that talk about the strategic planet. Basically, what we do at the center is mobilize knowledge to improve quality of youth engagement. Um, I mean, for challenge youth mental health across Ontario. We do this through various ages, such as early years 0 to 6, up to the ages of 25. Certain areas that we focus on are primary care pathways, meaning the interactions that you may have or your peers or your family members or your families itself have with the first care responder, youth and family engagement, digital e-mental health, and system initiatives. Today's objectives for this session, um, sorry, I'm just making sure the chat I can. Um, Today's objectives will be to learn how to create a safe space and a place for meaningful conversations of youth peer supporting each other, learning about the role of language, empathy, and reflective listening. Some of you have heard about active listening, so reflective listening will be something to unpack throughout this video session. And we'll learn how to share your lived experience in and a story in a way that is hopeful, in a way that is helpful for your peer and for yourself as well.
Alright, so now I will switch over to the videos. If anyone has any trouble hearing or seeing the videos, please let me know.
Communication is at the heart of youth peer support. To encourage open communication, you must first identify a safe place and create a safe space for you and your peer. That way, you'll both feel free to express your thoughts and emotions. What's a safe place? A safe place is a physical location or an online platform where you're both comfortable meeting. It should be accessible, yet private. Space, on the other hand, is the environment and atmosphere you create. A safe space is that feeling of comfort and acceptance within a place. Wondering how you can ensure a safe place and space for you and your peer? Check out the Center's Youth Engagement Toolkit for tips, strategies, and examples. Now that you know how to create the right environment for you and your peer, let's talk about communication techniques. It's important for you to pay attention to the language you use. A key piece of advice from other youth peer supporters is to mirror the language that you hear. This means taking your cues from the person you are supporting. A good example is the use of gender pronouns. It's important not to assume to know someone's gender based on their appearance, name, or other character traits. When you first meet your peer, you can ask what their pronouns are. This is one of the most fundamental ways you can show trans or gender nonconforming youth respect, as it demonstrates that you accept them for who they are. Another great piece of advice is to adapt to the situation. Pay attention to the individuals and groups you are supporting, and be prepared to have discussions about language and what terms are appropriate to them or not. You may even want to set some guidelines relating to language. Remember, discussing language can be a great learning opportunity for everyone. There are different types of questions you can ask your peer to get the conversation going. For example, there are yes or no questions, which lead to a short, straightforward answer. There are also open-ended questions, which empower your peer to guide the conversation and focus on the elements that they need or want to talk about. Open-ended questions cannot be answered simply with yes or no. They require a more elaborate answer. As a youth peer supporter, your role is to listen to their responses without interruption and without leading the conversation in a specific direction. To get the conversation going, you can ask questions such as, "Can you break this down to help me better understand? How would you like things to be different? What are the positives about this? What are the negatives? And what do you want to do next?" So your peers share their story with you. Now what? Well, it's time for you to practice reflective listening. This means trying to understand what your peer is sharing with you and confirming that you understood it correctly. It may seem easy, but it takes practice to do it well. To practice reflective listening, acknowledge what your peer is feeling. Repeat or summarize what you've heard to make sure you understood it well, and ask for clarification or more details when needed. The use of affirmations is another helpful communication tool. Affirmations are statements and gestures that recognize your peer's strength and their behaviors that lead to positive change, no matter how big or small. That's what affirmations are for, to build your peers' confidence in their ability to change. But to be effective, affirmations must be genuine and consistent. For example, you could tell your peer, "I appreciate that you were willing to meet with me today. You handled yourself really well in that situation." Or, "You were really brave to share this with me." It's also very important for you to show empathy. This means understanding and sharing the feelings expressed by your peer. Empathetic listening is key to providing good youth peer support. Are you wondering what's the difference between empathy and sympathy? Watch this great video to find out. You'll also learn more on how to be an empathetic listener. Finally, it's important to communicate in a non-violent way. You and your peer may not always agree or see eye to eye, and that's normal. What's important is to talk those conflicts out in a healthy way. To do that, try to use nonviolent communication techniques. Nonviolent communication focuses on being empathetic to your peers' feelings as well as your own. Nonviolent communication techniques will help you think, listen, and speak in ways that are compassionate to both of you. Some simple techniques include: when in conflict, stop for a moment and take a deep breath. Ask yourself, "What's my point of view? Why do I think this is the right point of view?" Ask your peer what their point of view is, and really listen to their answer. Just like for reflective listening, mirror back what you heard to make sure you truly understood what your peer meant. Ideally, avoid using text messages or emails in a conflict situation. Communication relies heavily on tone and body language. The chances of misinterpreting one another or of making the situation worse are much greater when writing or reading a message. So meet in person if a conflict arises. And don't forget, always follow up and debrief with your peer and one of your supports after a conflict situation, and encourage your peer to do the same. This will help both of you learn, grow, and let go. Thanks for watching. Up next, sharing your story. Often become easier to handle when we can share them with someone. Peer support is all about connecting with another person, showing empathy, and sharing lived experiences. As a peer supporter, it's about reflecting on your own experiences to support the well-being of another person. A key ingredient of peer support is a sense of shared identity or experience between you and your peer, or a sense that you've been through some similar things. These connections can help build trust, understanding, and a sense of teamwork between you and your peer. It can be as simple and powerful as saying, "I've been there too, you're not alone." Sharing your story is a great way to create those connections and strengthen the bond between you and your peer. Reflecting on what you've been through also has some other great benefits, both for you and your peer. For your peer, listening to your story can be an empowering experience that can help break down the isolation and stigma they may be experiencing. It can also be a therapeutic process for you. As a peer supporter, you might find that it gives you a sense of power and control over your own journey. Finally, being open about your lived experiences can also help you bond with your peer, develop trust, and create a healthy peer support relationship. Your story is your own, so only you can decide how to share it. But when it comes to sharing your story as part of peer support relationship, it's important to share your story in a hopeful and helpful way. After all, it's all about supporting your peer. Here are a few tips from the research and some youth peer supporters that we spoke to. First, make sure your peer wants to hear your story. They may not want or feel ready to, and that's okay. They might be more open to hearing it down the road, so consider bringing it up again at a later point. If they are open to hearing your story, make sure it's the right time for both of you. We'll go into more detail on how you can create a safe space in another video, but it's important for both of you to set appropriate boundaries so you can take care of yourself. Next, if your story includes sensitive topics like suicide, self-harm, sexual assault, domestic violence, or accidents, give your peer a heads up. Ask your peer if they're okay to continue talking about these subjects. If they aren't, it's not the time to share. If they are, be prepared to support the emotional and physical reactions your story may stir up. Keep your peer in mind as you share your story. Which parts of your story can they learn from? Which parts are relevant? For example, depending on what your peer is going through, you might focus on the mental health challenges you've experienced, including the signs, symptoms, and how they affected you. You might also discuss what else was going on in your life at the time. Finally, try to end on a hopeful note. Consider sharing what made you seek help, the support you received, and where you're currently at with your mental health journey. Remember, when people who are going through a hard time hear from those with similar experiences, it humanizes their own challenges and helps them feel less alone. Most importantly, it can provide hope that things can get better. Thanks for watching. Up next, working across differences.
Thank you, Rebecca. Awesome. So thank you everybody for paying attention to those videos. I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of peace of mind given the context in which we live in and the circumstances that we are experiencing with COVID and being socially distant. Um, you can transform that message in terms of meeting in person to follow up about a topic or center specific mixed communication to follow up with a phone call or follow up with a video chat. Please ensure that you are safe and your safety of the people that are around you are um, a priority at all times, especially during COVID-19. This next stage we're going to set up is for all of us to talk about different things related to these videos. How it works is that in the next 10 minutes, we're going to take this space as safe as space so we can discuss and reflect on the content. Everybody can participate, sharing their perspectives, answers through the chat, or speaking through your microphone. You can also do this on your own and just write down your answers. This is a whole journey for everybody, and we're going at your pace. This is a safer, brave space, which means your life experience are valid, they're powerful, and they're respected. When the conversation is over, it is over. So let's start. Let's get started. For the communications consideration videos, we know that communication is key to providing youth peer support or any type of peer support, in this case for young people. But let us hear from you. What does safer spaces mean for you? Like, what does that mean? Did you get something out of the video, or is this something that is new for you?
And so, for all of you sharing today, if you like to share things in the chat below right underneath the slide there, feel free to do so.
While you're thinking and going through it, oh, somebody shared that a safer space is when I know that the person um, who are there with me can understand my experiences because they have also gone through something similar. Yes. Mutuality, connectivity is something that creates the atmosphere a little bit more stable and more peaceful to be who you are, to allow yourself to share those moments that you need support through. Raccoon is telling us that feeling like they can be their whole self without needing to leave parts of their identity or experiences out. Yes, this is awesome. Like everybody's reading, hitting the pocket. Um, but let's move into the next question and like please continue sharing your answers. I'm just mindful of the time. If you can see something that is bothering your peer, what open-ended questions could you ask to encourage them to communicate and share? Is this something like, could you please repeat that for me? Or, um, I'm sorry, I am afraid that I am misunderstanding you at the moment. Could you please clarify this for me? Um, rather than, is that what you said? Or is this not what you said? More often, yes or no questions lead to our own understanding of those statements. And at time, just like when we're texting somebody, um, if they share things in all caps, we just think, oh my God, they're screaming at me or something. But it might be just that the all caps was on at that moment and it was not necessarily that, right? Um, the same thing happened in this type of questions. But um, Snell shared that they agree with Frog and Raccoon, and it's also both a feeling of internal sense of safety and comfort, which is totally true. Um, Safer spaces is a holistic bubble. Let's put it as a bubble. It's like it's not only affecting your environment, but also it's what you project, and it's also what is coming after you, or at what are some non-violent communication techniques that you have used or that you use in conflict situations? Are these like um, asking somebody else to be the mediator during the conflict so there is not two parties only involved and there is also a person that can guide some of the conversation? Or is this a technique that you will just go quiet for a little bit and try to reflect on yourself and the situation? Or is this you walk out for a second and come back so you can cool off? Um, and as we're thinking and as we are maneuvering around communication, communication is it works in many different ways: verbally, visual, um, body communication, um, expressive, facial. Like there are many forms of communications, and the languages that we use in also um, benefit or affect the way that we're describing something or supporting something. Um, those things to keep in mind. And as we're moving forward with sharing your story, we'll learn in this video that your insights and experiences are worth sharing. They're important. One of the best pieces or my favorite sentences I ever heard, and it's part of the video, is that when you share that you have lived some similar experiences through the mental health journey or mental health system, it humanizes other people's experiences and it makes us feel um, less alone and more connected. So sharing your experience is totally worth. This video talks about how your life experience in a story in a way that is hopeful and that is helpful for you and your peer. As we learned in previous videos, um, it is part of the wellness journey, being hopeful and helpful at the same time. How can you make sure your peer is ready to share or hear your story? How would you make sure that they are ready to hear? what you have experienced. If you want to join us with the mic, please feel free. That's good for that question. Those are awesome questions. I'm totally imagining a raccoon right now typing this, and it's totally awesome. Um, Thinking about your story, what are some helpful parts you would like to share? And this is more personal. Um, what are some things that you might want to keep private, right? Um, please don't feel the need that you need to share this in the chat. Like we are all learning by ourselves and collectively. Um, Another question that Snell share is, how's your mental space right now? That's pretty awesome. Um, we often think that mental um, health or our mental journey is just a whole level of ourselves. It is just one part of who we are, right? And it takes a lot of a space, or it takes some of the space, and being asked about that is just wonderful. It just allows the person to check in with themselves, and also um, to be honest with you, whether they will be okay to listen to you, or at the moment it will not be the case.
Those are very awesome questions that are being shared, and I know the word boundaries came up a couple times in the video as well. And I think those are both also really good questions to ask ourselves in terms of, would I feel comfortable in sharing some of my experiences with others, or how is my mental space right now? And just making sure we're sharing in a way that feels safe for everyone involved, including our own selves too. So those are awesome questions. Thanks for everyone that shared.
Anything that the videos cover that was new to you, or is there anything that you think the videos?
The first thing I thought of was COVID. And how communication just looks really different right now, I think, for everyone. Ideally, when I think of peer support, I just think of an in person conversation in a safe space that you're sharing together. In person, you can kind of see the other person's like nonverbal cues too, right? COVID just makes it a little hard. It's going to be with masks on and like at least 6 feet away, and that feels a little odd to do. But just thinking about different ways of communications that we can utilize too, whether that peer support happens over FaceTime or over Zoom or something like that, or it can just happen over text too. But checking in with the other person, making sure that what they're communicating you're understanding correctly, because sometimes written words can be taken a certain way too, right? So I think those are just pieces that we didn't even know we had to think about, but I definitely kind of noticed that while watching that today. There's a bunch of things, so I'll stop talking.
Snell has totally agreed with you in terms of how it's difficult to recognize how a person is feeling through a messaging or text messaging. Frog says they appreciate the videos discussed about affirmations and It's also the idea that we need to reflect on what we're willing to share with someone when we do peer support. Just equitable and awesome. Um, Raccoon is sharing with us that can also be hard supporting peers online. Yes, because they need to make sure that we both have a safe space between us, but also they're in a space that feels safe enough, talking about experiences, for example, without um, people nearby listening in or looking at our phones. That's adding into your statement. Can sometimes make changes to make that easier. Um, for example, people want to use chat boxes instead of talking out loud. That's actually true. Yeah. Um, we like to encourage people to continue looking for peer support, online series or strategies or information or trainings. There are awesome trainings out there. This is a reminder that these are learning series. This is not a training. This is not going to be accredited. This is a space where everybody can learn mutually from others' experiences. Thank you for your time. And next week on the Pillars of Youth Peer Support Learning series, we're going to talk about working across differences, learning a little bit of intersectionality and how does that play a role in peer support, and supporting your peer through a crisis.
Very much,
Thank you, everyone.
Camille, for facilitating another awesome session. I think we're building on our understanding of peer support each time, and I really, really look forward to the next one, especially around the working across differences, because I feel like that's really important to recognize. So I'm looking forward to it. Thank you everyone for those of you that joined. We have recorded this session, so you will be receiving a link once the series is over, and we'll put it on the resource page and it'll be available on our website at any time, just not right now yet. But I hope you join the next session next week, same time, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week and the weekend. Bye, everyone.